What is going on, everybody? Well, this past weekend, me and my wife were lucky enough to check out Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Orlando. Just yesterday, I dropped a vlog tour video, which is a first for me, so please check that out if you want to get an idea of what the actual experience of the park is. We walk through all the scare zones. I've got B-roll footage of every single one of the houses, and we kind of give some of our opinions on the overall night, the overall park experience. And today, since me and my wife were able to just barely by the skin of our teeth squeeze into all 10 houses in that one night, I figured I would talk about all of them and rank them based on my own experience from worst to best. Also, before I continue, this is a barbecue shirt. I'm not, I saw Smokeologist and didn't realize I was wearing this one. I'm not promoting any vapes or any CBD products, so don't worry. Don't keep your eyes peeled for any ads in this one. Now, it needs to be said that this is a very subjective experience that I had with all 10 of these houses. You know, it very much plays into what time of the day you go into it, what day of the week, also what time of the month when they go from September all the way to the beginning of November. And very much so, maybe even more so than anything else, your place in line when you're walking through this. Because if you've never been to one of these haunted houses, typically you walk through with about 8 to 10 people. And these people that have these little scripted jump scare moments, the actors, even the animatronics in some of these are on a loop. And you might be the person that gets the best seat in the house and you get the jump scare and they come out right next to you, or you might be the person that just missed that or are 2 or 3 people behind and you see it happen, and lack of a better word, the scares are kind of spoiled for you. So definitely at least 2 or 3 of these houses could have been higher if I had a better experience as far as my place in line, but certainly towards the end of the night, I was pulling short straws left and right and was just seeing a lot of the best scares that these houses had available through the eyes of the person 2 or 3 people ahead of me. So starting off at number 10, the house that I was least impressed with, it's going to unfortunately go to the Exorcist Believer. Now, I tried my best to walk into this house and not have any preconceived negativity or anything from my experience with the movie or my thoughts towards this trilogy. I walked in hoping that there was going to be at least some production or at least some part of the house dedicated to the first film. And it's entirely based off of Exorcist Believer. You have the 2 little girls, and their 90% of the house is just them popping out at you through various ways. So that in and of itself kind of made the house feel a little bit redundant. You get some demonic stuff at the beginning and towards the end, but the majority of the house is just those little girls popping out of closets, popping out of doors. There was one legitimately good jump scare where you're funneled into this very tight hallway, and me and my wife had the best seat where we were walking through and both little girls got at us from both opposite sides at the same time. There was also another really good one where you get to like the exorcism scene where the 2 girls are strapped to their chairs, and there is kind of a mannequin or something with one of them that you could tell is fake, and by the time you walk around it to go around, you expect the other one is fake too, and it's actually a person and they jump out at you. That one got my wife pretty good, but it was just somewhat of a redundant house. I didn't feel like there was as much variety, and because I had such a negative experience with the movie, I was a bit disappointed that the entire house was dedicated to that film and didn't have much of a variety of the franchise itself. But I understand they have to promote the new film. They're trying to put a lot of eggs into that basket. So some of you might have had a better experience with this one. This was also my last house of the night, so maybe some exhaustion had set in. The fact that I already had blisters on my feet and it was 1:30 in the morning, that could have affected it a little bit, but of the 10, this is the one that I just didn't enjoy so much. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Dr. Oddfellows' Creepy Origins. And this one, more than all of them, was certainly affected by my place in line, because just about every scare in this house I saw coming 2 or 3 people ahead of me, or I heard it happen to the person behind me. And so this is one where if I had gotten a better place in line, it could have been significantly higher on this list, because it's essentially like a creepy clown circus type vibe. Even when you're walking to the house, it's a big circus tent. And Dr. Oddfellow, this is the only year I've been, but he seems to be a character that's kind of a recurring character at Halloween Horror Nights. One of the scare zones was dedicated to him, and you had an actor out there portraying him and had kind of a clown themed thing going on with the people walking around jumping in front of you. So he seems to be a pretty popular character. You walk through, and there was a lot of animatronics in this one, more so than the rest, so not as many actors jumping out, and so that's not going to get a rise out of me as much as an actor. And then the narrative to this house, which is something that I'll probably revisit during a couple of these. I was kind of funneled into the house, and we were walking through so quickly that I didn't really grasp the narrative that they were trying to tell. And so I don't really know what the creepy origins of Dr. Oddfellow are. So this is one where I was kind of just checking everything out, looking at it, but I didn't really grasp any bit of story that they were trying to express with this house. So I like this one fine, but of the ones that I did enjoy, which is the 9 that aren't Exorcist, this is the one that I just kind of got the short straw as far as my place in line that affected my experience. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Dual Dragons. Now, apparently there used to be a ride at Universal Studios called Dual Dragons, and this is kind of like trying to recapture some of the vibe of that. I have not been to Universal Studios since I was 6 years old, so I don't have any built-in love or nostalgia for that. If you do, you might like this ride even more. But this is very much like a fantasy horror type experience, to where you have like a red theme and a blue theme. The red theme is more like demon-looking people. The blue theme are more like frozen entities and like a cold side of evil. And so you'll have these masked people come out in different colors and try to grab at you. There were dragon animatronics that would shoot out smoke to try to jump scare you. There's a point about 3/4 of the way through the house to where it says choose your fate. You can either go to the left or to the right, which is red or blue. I chose red, hoping that the more hellish side would be a little bit more intense. This one was a good house. This is the second house that we walked into, and it certainly was the tamer of the first few that we walked into. So I think it's purely just because I don't really have much experience with the ride, and I'm not as much of a fantasy person, that this one didn't stick in my mind as much as some of the others, but it was a really cool house. Number 7 is going to be Blood Moon Dark Offerings, and it was kind of funny to edit the vlog video because apparently I just could not keep the title of this house straight. I walked in saying Blood Moon Offerings, and then I walked out saying Blood Moon Sacrifice, and it's Blood Moon Dark Offerings, but this was the very first house that we walked into. It's the closest to the entrance, so we figured might as well just jump at the first one. And this one, I really enjoyed the production value on it more than anything else. It goes for that village, Resident Evil 4 kind of vibe, or Resident Evil Village, obviously. And so you have a lot of people in like these old wooden towns that are in cloaks and old kind of clothing that are jumping out with knives, and they got like blood curse stuff all over them. You see like a bunch of people that have been sacrificed and cut up on tables. There's a few segments where you open up to like a bigger view of the village, and you see like a little mini town that was created, and people up in a clock tower ringing a bell, like yelling for help and stuff. So this one was really neat, and one of the best jump scares of the entire night, because you kind of get an idea even very early on where the scares are going to be coming from. You see like the curtains, you see the little open dark sides on your left and your right where someone's probably standing there waiting for you to come. But there was one specific spot in this one where it's just a guy hiding behind a pillar, like in this bar. And it's like a ninja movie. Like I had no idea that he was there, and he played it off perfect to where he was just right behind it and then whoosh, just came out, and did not expect that one whatsoever. One of the best individual jump scares of the night. And so just the atmosphere that they created with this old village, the blood red moon having this red hue across the entire house, gave a really cool atmosphere. So I enjoyed this one quite a bit just because of the production value. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Yeti Campground Kills. And if you are a fan of slashers, particularly the franchises from the 80s, this one has a lot of potential to be one of your favorites, because you switch out all of the Yetis for a guy holding a machete wearing a hockey mask, and this more or less is like a Friday the 13th little haunted house. So you have this campground in the wilderness that you're walking through, and a whole bunch of Yetis are attacking. So you get a bunch of Yeti monsters that look really cool that are popping out of curtains and busting through windows and reaching through trees at you. You also had some really cool stuff where like victims were jumping out for jump scares. Like a camp counselor would jump out of a closet and have a severed arm. And you'd have people that are getting attacked by Yetis. And so this one was really cool and had some really effective scares. Of the 3 that we walked into in that first little leg of the night, this one definitely had the best jump scares. And again, I just like that kind of slasher aesthetic that it has. Even though it's going for the monster movie vibe, it very much captures that Camp Crystal Lake sleepaway camp type vibe. And so I could almost see them keeping that haunted house up and just changing a few of the signs and changing what the actors are wearing and just going for that as an 80s slasher one. And, you know, 80s slashers are very close to my heart. So I enjoyed this one quite a bit, had some of the best scares of the entire night. Coming in at number 5 is going to be Universal Monsters Unmasked. And this was the first house that we walked into during the second leg of the night, after we had taken a break and rode the Revenge of the Mummy ride and went to go try to find something to eat and kind of get our second wind. And so we walked into this one with kind of wrong expectations. Was really the only thing that probably hurt this a little bit. This could have been even higher, because when you say Universal Monsters to me, my mind immediately thinks Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman, and I was hung up on that as opposed to actually looking at the graphic that was being displayed at this house, which shows Phantom of the Opera, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the Invisible Man. And so I kind of walked in really looking forward to seeing the characters that were not even going to be displayed here. So once you get past that, which I did, you walk into this and they do a really good job at capturing that old classic movie vibe. You walk in, you're like on the streets of Paris. There's a person on this bridge, like a cop who's ringing a bell, telling everybody to get inside. And you kind of descend into the lower levels of Paris, and you get Phantom of the Opera through quite a bit of it. They did these really cool things with silhouettes where they were playing like kind of recreated scenes from the movie where the girl pulls away his mask and he's like, ah. And then you get, as the house is named, an unmasked Phantom of the Opera jumping out at you for quite a bit, where there's pianos and he would pop out through the red curtains. And eventually you get to a room with a couple different invisible men, which the costume looked great on him. I didn't actually see Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde, so I don't know if I was just in a bad place in line or if I just happened to miss it. I'm not sure, but I actually had to experience that part of it watching the B-roll footage that I was given. So I don't know what happened with that. I only remember seeing Phantom of the Opera and the Invisible Man. Maybe I was just blanking, but it was a really cool house if you like those old school monster movies. I think they did a good job at capturing that old school horror movie vibe, that black and white movie, even though you're seeing everything in color, aesthetic. And so I had a really good time with this one. Coming in at number 4 is one that, of the rankings that I have looked at in preparation for this video, seems to be at the bottom of all of them. And that is Chucky Kill Count. And I think you can attribute that to the fact that I'm just a huge Chucky fan. I'm a fanatic of this franchise. And this is a house that is very much made just for the fans. I could understand completely why somebody that doesn't have as much love or as much knowledge of the characters, the individual kills, or the set pieces of the different movies would not be as impressed with this one. Like my wife, this was her least favorite by a landslide of all the 10 that we've looked through, because it's pretty much animatronic Chucky dolls coming out at you, which is not going to be as scary as humans. The humans, for the most part, that jump out at you are people that are dressed as Chucky with a gigantic Funko Pop head, which looks more silly than scary. And the house is more or less dedicated in the first part for recreating some looks, some kills, and some scenes of the movie. There was a spot where you had an actress that was portraying Kyle, and she's kind of hiding next to a conveyor belt from the end of Child's Play 2. There was a spot where the guy that gets his eyes impaled by the good guy doll eyes was like pressed against the wall. And so you have a lot of that in the first half. And then it seems like the house is over, which pissed me off for a minute. I was like, that was so short. That's bullshit. And so you kind of look like you're walking through an exit. You go back into like this warehouse setting where they have all these studio lots where they have these houses set up. And then you walk into a second part of the house. And I was like, oh, thank God. And that second half is essentially just Chucky going nuts, trying to kill everybody. And so you have a lot of actors popping out in like good guy employee outfits, and they got an animatronic Chucky on them, like stabbing them and, choking them and everything. I had a really good time with this one because I'm a Chucky fan. And so I liked seeing all the references to the movies. I liked seeing specific kills from the movie recreated. I liked hearing Chucky's laugh and everything like that. It was something that was just a cool experience for fans. But I understand the failure of this house is not having as much wide appeal. So if you walk in just because you recognize Chucky as a horror icon and you want to experience this, it's not as impressive as some of the other houses, but it did what I needed it to do. Number 3 was absolutely the surprise of the night, and that is The Darkest Deal. I didn't really know what this was. From a distance, I saw the graphic and it looked like a Western because it's just this dude and it looked like a desert, but when you get closer, he's actually holding an acoustic guitar. And essentially what this is a Louisiana bayou horror story about this blues singer that sells his soul for fame. And what this house did that makes it stand out for me, which again might just have to do with my luck and my place in line, but to me, this was the most successful at actually telling a narrative when you're walking through the house, which all of these, for the most part, are trying to do. Most of them. And so the Darkest Deal, you walk in and very clearly throughout these different segments of this house, you get chunks of this story where you walk in, there's this very demonic devil looking dude holding a contract, laughing, ha 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 ha, next to like a corpse or just a catatonic blues player. You enter into this really seedy looking blues club with like these demon vampire things popping out and the human blues player up on stage trying to entertain and nobody's watching him. You keep progressing through it. Eventually you get to where he has sold his soul and he's trying to like get away, and the demon or the devil like snaps his fingers and he goes all catatonic like Bill Hader in It Chapter 2. And then the last little chunk of it is just demons popping out, and you get like this little goat devil thing, and your soul is mine forever. So this one was not only creepy, but it had a really cool vibe to it. And I love the fact that there was a clear story being told that I was able to experience while I was walking through, which is the only house of the night that I had that experience with. So I really dug this one. I almost wish that more horror movies would capture that Louisiana Bayou atmosphere, because I think that's a really untapped well of potential for some good horror stuff. So this one, big surprise, really enjoyed it. And of the non-IP based houses, this one was obviously my favorite. Moving on to number 2, we're going to have Stranger Things. And this one I was really looking forward to. The couple people that I did talk to or read comments from all said that Stranger Things was the best one of the night. So I walked into this one and it was not as scary as a number of the other houses. That's the only thing that holds it back a good bit. But this one was by far the coolest house of the night. Essentially, they're taking you through the narrative of season 4 and all of the big standout sequences for the most part of season 4. There's a segment of this house that's dedicated to it. So you walk in and immediately you walk into this trailer and you see this mannequin of Chrissy all contorted on the ceiling, and an actor playing Eddie jumps out, "Chrissy, wake up!" and tries to scare you. You have a number of segments where you walk through the Upside Down and you walk through like the Vecna room where all the different corpses of high school kids are like locked up in tendrils. Vecna is the one for the most part that's jumping out of curtains and trying to scare you throughout most of it. You get the Master Puppets segment, which was awesome, where you got Dustin and Eddie rocking out and they're battling off a bunch of like hologram bats and they're playing Master Puppets when you're walking through it. So I was doing this whenever I was guiding my wife through it. The coolest part was the scene where they have the sheet rope to try to go from the Upside Down to the real world. You walk in and you just see this rope of sheets, and then you look up and they actually like cut a hole in the ceiling and had a whole upper floor where they created an upside down room. And so you just look up and see all of that. That was pretty impressive. And there was one Demogorgon by the end of it too that I wished I could have saw, but I think just my place in line kind of screwed me because I was already through the house and my wife saw the Demogorgon. I did not. But this one was a really cool experience if you're a fan of the show, if you're a fan of season 4 especially. Production-wise, this one I had the most fun with. Coming in at number 1 for me was The Last of Us. And I was pretty sure that you could place your bets that either The Last of Us or Chucky was going to end up my favorite of the night just because I'm a massive fan of both of those franchises. And to me, what The Last of Us did that made it my easy number 1 was this was the only house to me that did both sides of haunted houses perfect, to where there was really cool production value and there was a lot of fun to be had and a lot of things to marvel at as far as the makeup work and the costumes and the way they recreate things from the video game. But at the same time, they did a damn good job at having the scares and having this creepy atmosphere and having you tense and on edge throughout the entire thing. So this was the only one that nailed both of those for me. And so you have a lot of different segments from the video game that are recreated here. You have more action segments here that kind of break up the horror. So the convenience store scene where the truck has been crashed because the raiders were attacking Joel and Ellie. You walk through the convenience store with the crashed truck and you have raiders and Joel popping out and kind of doing scares as they're like shooting at each other. You'll have raiders pop out with pickaxes and shit at you. Then you start getting into like the sewers and stuff, and a lot more infected come out. And the mix of the costumes, the performances of these actors at just really, really perfectly recreating how these monsters look and how the infected look in the game and the TV show as well as the sound design when they pop up. That was awesome. When you have the different infected, when you have the clickers, and you can hear the clicking in the distance, and you're like, oh, fuck, when is it going to pop out? And especially the bloaters. The bloaters got me. I'm a hard audience to scare, whether you're in movies or in real life, especially when I'm walking through a house and I'm expecting it. There's not many jump scares that are going to get me. The bloaters scared the fuck out of me because I was not expecting them when they popped out. They just kind of came out from behind a curtain and were massive. And I was like, oh, it's a big motherfucker. So there were multiple spots that got me in The Last of Us. The only thing that I did not see, which again may have been my place in line, I've seen footage, or it could have been that this was how they do it in Hollywood, of an actor playing Ellie and an actor playing Joel interacting at one segment. I did not see that segment. Again, maybe I missed it, but that was the only thing that I was missing that I was expecting to see. But beyond that, all across the board, this one was just very cool. I mean, having spores out there, if you're a fan of the video game or even a fan of the show, but more so the video game, this is just an absolute love letter. And so I had a blast with this one. This one, without a doubt, by a landslide, was my number one at Halloween Horror Nights 2023. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please check out my vlog tour of my entire night at Halloween Horror Nights. I'm also going to put a playlist down here of all my Last of Us coverage. If you're a fan of that series, please like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.